There are so many different ways that anime can draw us in. Pulse-pounding action, heart-wrenching drama, powerful acting, or beautiful animation can all grab us and make us keep watching. But before it can reel you in, a show needs to hook you, and the first hook cast is almost always the OP, or opening credits. A good OP sets the tone for a show, tells you enough about the world and characters to get you interested, and, in an ideal world, acts as a kick-ass music video in its own right. Not all OPs are created equally, though, and since no one else seems up to the esoteric and largely useless task, I've taken it upon myself to ask, what's in an OP? This week, Baby Steps shows us how two different intros can use the same song to great effect. Baby Steps' first OP begins on a particularly strong note. The build-up in the title theme, Believe in Yourself by Mao Abe, is tied directly to the build-up to a pro tennis match. We get our first glimpse of Eiichiro Maruo from behind, seeing only his iconic haircut. Each step he takes feels weightier than the last until he finally plants his feet on the court, and the camera takes its time, tilting up with each transition until we finally get a look at the determination on his face. This segment is very effective at building anticipation by hiding information from the viewer, and makes us feel as though we could be in for the match of the century. By contrast, the initial cuts of the second OP interpret the fast drum roll not as a build-up, but instead an explosion of action. The OP quickly establishes a motif of bouncing tennis balls before we see a lightning-fast montage of characters serving, all confined to tiny panels that dance around the screen in a way that's a little too hard to follow. It's not nearly as effective, but it does create a more natural transition to the title, which is a little obnoxious and obtrusive in the first OP. The tennis ball motif also creates a nice transition into the character introductions, as the ball bounces and soars over the entire cast before landing with Eiichiro and Natsu. Unfortunately, while the editing is a little smoother, these shots don't convey nearly as much about the characters as similar shots from the first version, though in fairness, they do go by more quickly. In the original OP, the character's body language and positioning tells you a bit about their relationships to each other and Eiichiro. Yukichi is clearly very friendly, Yuki is clearly a brat, Takuma is nonplussed by Maruo but keeps an eye on him, and Natsu is very obviously excited to see him. The coaches are all ready to get down to business. Now we cut to Eiichiro's school and his famous A-chan notes, which dominate the entire frame. But the notes quickly fall away to reveal Natsu, the spark for A-chan's obsession with tennis, and the world swims into focus. The jealous reaction of the boys behind her is a quick shorthand for conveying that she's the school idol, and it also, not coincidentally, nearly pushes Eternal second runner Himeko out of frame. Behind Eiichiro, we see Takuma getting chewed out, ever the bad boy, and Naruyuki glaring at A-chan, who he incorrectly perceives as his rival, from a door frame. From here, both OPs break into montages. In the first, we see Eiichiro taking the same swings over and over, and these clips are repeated 3 times. Normally, I criticize OPs for looping or repeating animations, but here it helps to emphasize what the show is largely about: training. These movements are vital in his pro match, but he's been honing them for years. Those clips are intercut with a tournament ladder superimposed against various players mid-match, followed by a collage of some of Eiichiro's strongest rivals climbing to the top. We're then treated to a page of Eiichiro's meticulous tennis notes as he practices the same swings we see him use in the pro match later, all edited together in one smooth motion across 3 different days in one of the most beautiful and efficient bits of animation I've ever seen. Like, seriously, I just want to pause the video to appreciate how that 4 seconds of animation conveys Eiichiro's tireless diligence, gets across the physical and mental strain of all that practice, shows the passage of time, and creates a link between the pro game and the rest of the montage, all while syncing perfectly with the music. Someone spent a lot of time on that. Anyway, at last we get a glimpse of A-chan's secret weapon, 100 square control, followed by more practice from a closer vantage point and some furious note-taking synced to a sick drum line. By comparison, the second OP's montage is less repetitive, but also a bit less effective. Showing Maruo's various exercises against the backdrop of his schedule is clever, but not nearly as evocative as the more simple superimposition from the first season. This shot of Maruo being overshadowed and consumed by his own schedule and notes is pretty great, but before we can fully appreciate it, it cuts to another quick burst of tiny squares that are hard to follow and don't really give each individual character the attention they deserve. That said, it is pretty cool when we finally pull out and see that the panels form a tennis court, and the final shot of Ike Soji lounging atop the steps like there's some sort of throne is absolutely great. From this point on, the montage takes an interesting turn. We see Eiichiro's victories only in his exuberant reactions, which build up to a fast cut of him winning increasingly bigger games, with the crowd steadily moving upward until he's finally standing victorious before an entire stadium. Then we see the various failures that he had to overcome to reach that point, falls and injuries that carry over to his various rivals. One thing Baby Steps is really good about is showing that every player is dealing with their own struggles and ambitions, which makes it feel like no match is a sure thing for our protagonist, but what sets him apart is how he pulls himself back up every time. This bit is probably my favorite part of either OP, since it encapsulates the way A-chan and Natsu naturally grow closer and fall for each other over the course of the series. Theirs is a straightforward love story, strung together from small, heartwarming moments and never disrupted by contrived disasters or tropey misunderstanding bullshit. They share a common ambition and they make each other smile, and that's all they need. I don't think it's a coincidence that two shows that do romance right use the same shots of hands drifting together. Both OPs clearly save their budgets for the final moments, because in the last 30 seconds they both put some incredible animation on display. The second OP continues its montage in style, with fast cuts of rallies so smooth and detailed they must be rotoscoped from pro games. Even an autograph signing gets the kind of flair that's normally saved for writing names in a death note. They seriously pull out all the stops, with buttery smooth action, fast 3D camera movement, and stupidly detailed characters that seemingly never go off model. It's a visual spectacle. But it doesn't tell a story like the first OP. Here, all of the focus is on a single intense match. Eiichiro wins points with all of the techniques that he's going to learn over the course of the series, returning lightning-fast volleys, moving up to the net aggressively, and tracking the ball with his remarkably fast eyes in the speed of a second. The animation for all of it is spectacular, though not to the same degree as the ridiculously complex shots of the second OP, and it builds to a single monumental serve and my other favorite part of either OP. Eiichiro hammers the ball and the crowd goes nuts. He's scored match point with a service ace, but we never actually see the serve go in. Instead, we see Maruo's friends and family react in turn, their faces telling us something incredible has just happened, and then we see the moment it dawns on him that he's won. He cheers, falls to his knees, and lets out a cry to the heavens. This OP has already proven itself to be great with build-up, but goddamn does it ever deliver on the payoff. Also, goddamn is that final title ever ugly. Yeah, it fits the lyrics, but it totally clashes with the elegance of the rest of the theme. In the final moments, the second OP is definitely stronger, as Maruo cracks open his notebook in the middle of a huge game and sees inspirational messages left by his friends overseas, all in remarkably good English, including the superb quote from Alex that's more or less the thesis statement of the entire series. Both of these OPs have their strong points, and while initially I like the first one more, it's actually a pretty tough call which is better. The second OP has a clear edge in terms of production values, with a considerably greater frame count and far less in the way of repetition, but it feels like with the first one, Studio Pierrot made more effective use of what they had. Ultimately, the song itself is pretty repetitive, and the first OP carefully times its repeated footage to take advantage of that. I'd also argue that, despite being cheaper, the animation in the first OP is better overall, aside from a few notable exceptions. The characters in the first OP have more believable weight to them, and while they stretch and go off model on occasion, in motion that has the effect of making their actions feel more dynamic. Some of the cuts in the second OP go by a little too quickly to register, while the camera in the first OP lingers on each shot just long enough for it to have an impact. The fixed camera angles also allow the characters to fit into the backdrops more effectively, while with camera movement, the characters look as though they've been painted on top of the CG instead of composited in. These factors, as well as little things like the fact that they chose to animate the characters instead of a freaking tennis ball, mean that on the whole, the first OP shows a higher level of craftsmanship. The first OP focuses on telling a story from beginning to end, which makes it a lot easier to follow and appreciate everything that's going on. The second OP is far more scattershot and frenetic, and thus a lot of details don't register the first or even 10th time you watch it. The flip side of this is that the second OP is free to try a wider variety of things, some of which it really nails. There are a few parts of the second OP that are better than anything in the first, but on the whole, the first one is consistently higher quality. Still, both of Baby Steps OPs are solid, which is more than can be said for other shows that reuse their theme songs in the second season. Together they highlight something important, that many different visual interpretations can work for a single song. Though they follow similar structures, the two openings take vastly different approaches, and they both work. I think one works a little better, sure, but that's a bit subjective given that it's difficult to compare them directly. When it comes time for a studio to make a new OP, regardless of what song they're using, they should try to do something new with it. When they try to emulate what worked before, the only possible outcome is that one of the two OPs will be the same but worse. Thanks for tuning in again to What's in an OP. I really appreciate your feedback on the last one, and I can't wait to do more of them. This is Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from his mother's basement.